The warning lights in the DARPA laboratory flashed red, casting an eerie glow across Dr. Susan White's face as she stared at her computer screen. The numbers didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense, but there they were, defying everything she knew about quantum physics. "Robert," she called out, her voice trembling with excitement. "Robert, you need to see this." Dr. Robert Clark rushed over from his workstation, coffee cup still in hand. His usually neat lab coat was wrinkled from a 16-hour shift, but his eyes were sharp as they focused on the screen. "That's impossible," he whispered, placing his cup down carefully. "The particle accelerator can't be showing these readings. It's like the particles are existing in two places at once." Susan nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she pulled up more data. "Not just two places. Look at these quantum signatures. It's as if we've created some kind of tear in space itself." The particle accelerator hummed behind them, its massive circular structure taking up most of the underground facility. What had started as a routine experiment to study quantum entanglement had turned into something else entirely. The team had been working on ways to improve quantum computing, but this was different. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Robert rushed to the main control panel, his face pale in the emergency lighting. "The energy readings are off the charts. We need to shut it down." "No, wait." Susan grabbed his arm. "Look at the containment field. It's holding. Whatever this is, it's stable." Above the accelerator, the air seemed to shimmer like a heat mirage. But instead of distorting what was behind it, the shimmer revealed something else. Through the ripple, they could see what looked like the same lab, but with subtle differences. The other side showed equipment they didn't have, in places they hadn't put them. The facility's security team burst through the doors, led by Agent Jack Foster of the NSA. "Dr. White, Dr. Clark, what's happening here?" "We're picking up energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen." Before either scientist could answer, every screen in the lab lit up with an incoming transmission. The signal hadn't come through any known communication channel. Instead, it seemed to emerge from the tear itself. A face appeared on the screens, distinctly humanoid but clearly alien, with silvery skin and eyes that seemed to change color as they watched. The being spoke, its words automatically translated by their systems. "Greetings, Earth scientists. I am Ambassador Xen of the Centauri Federation. We have been monitoring your dimension research with great interest." The room fell silent. Susan stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her shock. "You've been watching us." "How?" The ambassador's expression showed what might have been a smile. "We have been observing humanity's progress for some time. Your species has just achieved something remarkable. You've created a stable dimensional tear without any external guidance. This is unprecedented." Robert joined Susan at the main screen. "You mean other civilizations have this technology?" "Yes, but none discovered it as accidentally as you have. Most species spend centuries theorizing before attempting practical applications. Humans, it seems, have stumbled upon one of the universe's greatest secrets through sheer determination, and, if I may say, a remarkable disregard for what you consider possible." Agent Foster stepped forward, his training kicking in despite the extraordinary situation. "If you've been watching us, why reveal yourselves now?" The ambassador's expression grew serious. "Because you need to be warned. What you've discovered, this ability to tear the fabric of space-time, it's dangerous. Not just to you, but to all of reality. And not everyone in the galaxy will be pleased to learn that humans have this capability." Susan looked back at the shimmering tear, her mind racing with possibilities. "But if we can control it, study it, think of what we could learn." "That's precisely what concerns others," Sen replied. "Humans have a unique way of pushing boundaries, of taking theories and turning them into technologies at an alarming rate. Some species find this threatening." The tear above the accelerator pulsed, and new data flooded their screens. Susan's eyes widened as she read through it. "These are equations, theories about dimensional physics that we haven't even conceived of yet. Consider it a gesture of goodwill, the ambassador said. You'll need this knowledge for what's coming. We've detected other species taking an interest in your achievement. Not all of them share our belief in allowing natural technological progression. Agent Foster's phone buzzed, a direct call from the Pentagon. As he stepped aside to answer it, Robert turned to Susan. What exactly are we looking at here? What have we actually discovered? Susan's hands were shaking as she sorted through the new data. If I'm reading this correctly, we found a way to fold space, to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The implications for physics, for travel, for everything we thought we knew about reality. She looked up at her colleague, her eyes bright with excitement. Robert, we've just rewritten the laws of physics. The ambassador nodded. And that, Dr. White, is exactly why you need to be prepared. Your discovery will change everything. Not just for Earth, but for all known space-time. The question now is, are you ready for what comes next? Agent Foster returned, his face grim. That was the Joint Chiefs. They're detecting multiple objects entering the solar system at impossible speeds. Whatever's coming, it's coming fast. The ambassador's image flickered. Then we have less time than I thought. Dr. White, Dr. Clark, humanity is about to face its greatest challenge. How you handle the next few days will determine not just Earth's fate, but the very nature of reality itself. As if to emphasize the point, the tear pulsed again, growing slightly larger. Through it, they could now see multiple versions of their lab, each slightly different, all existing simultaneously. In one version, Susan saw herself wearing a military uniform. In another, the lab was dark and abandoned. Welcome, Sen said solemnly, to the Dimension War. Susan looked at the tear, then at her data, then at her colleagues. In just a few hours, everything they thought they knew about physics, about reality, about humanity's place in the universe, had changed. And somehow she knew this was just the beginning. The warning's lights continued to flash, but now they seemed less like a warning and more like a beacon, signaling the start of humanity's greatest adventure, and quite possibly its greatest test. Well, she said, straightening her lab coat and turning to her team. Let's get to work. We got some laws of physics to break. Admiral John Martinez stood at the observation deck of the Norfolk Naval Base, watching as workers swarmed around the U.S. Hyperion like ants around a fallen tree. The massive ship, once a standard aircraft carrier, now bristled with technology that would have seemed impossible just 6 months ago. Status report. He called out to the team behind him, not taking his eyes off the ship. Dr. Susan White stepped forward, tablet in hand. The dimensional drive is stable, Admiral. We've successfully integrated the Centauri designs with our own modifications. Commander Nash has been running simulations all week. Commander Peter Nash nodded, his usually cheerful face serious. The crew's adapting well to the new systems, though I have to admit, teaching sailors how to navigate in 5 dimensions isn't covered in any naval manual I've ever read. A loud hum filled the air as the Hyperion's new drive system powered up. Blue-white energy coursed through the visible conduits along the ship's hull. Where once there had been a flight deck, now stood a massive array of quantum field generators. The ship looked less like a carrier and more like something out of science fiction. Show me the latest test results, Martins ordered, finally turning to face his team. Robert Clark, now wearing a Navy science officer's uniform, pulled up a holographic display. We've managed to create stable dimension splits lasting up to 30 seconds. Watch this. The display showed footage from their last test. The Hyperion's outline blurred, then seemed to exist in 3 places at once. Each version was slightly different. Different positions, different configurations, but all clearly the same ship. The power requirements are enormous, Robert continued. But we found that human consciousness actually helps stabilize the effect. It's like our minds naturally want to make sense of existing in multiple dimensions at once. Martinez rubbed his chin thoughtfully, and the crew can handle it. Better than expected, Commander Nash replied. Turns out video games have been accidentally training people for multidimensional awareness for years. Our younger crew members especially take to it like they were born for it. A junior officer burst into the observation room, breathing hard. Admiral, we're getting a priority message from the Centauri Federation. A holographic display switched to show Ambassador Xen's familiar face. The alien looked concerned, more so than usual. Admiral Martinez, we've detected unusual activity in the dimensional planes around Earth. The Nexus Collective is moving faster than we anticipated. They're testing the boundaries between realities. Susan stepped closer to the display. Testing how? They're sending probe ships through microscopic tiers they've created. We believe they're mapping your defense capabilities across multiple dimensions. Martinez's jaw tightened. How long do we have? Days, perhaps. Their technology is more advanced than yours, but they've never encountered a species that adapts as quickly as humans do. Your unconventional approaches make you unpredictable. Commander Nash couldn't help but grin. They haven't seen anything yet. Show them the quantum fold maneuver, Dr. White. Susan pulled up new footage. The Hyperion was running another test, but this time instead of simply splitting into multiple versions, the ship seemed to fold space around itself. One moment it was there. The next it had twisted reality to appear kilometers away, leaving confusion in multiple dimensions. Impressive, Sen admitted, but the collective will respond with force. They believe maintaining dimensional stability is crucial to universal survival. Your experiments frighten them. With all due respect, Ambassador, Martins said, if they're frightened now, wait until they see what we do when we're actually trying to be scary. The ambassador's expression was unreadable. Just be careful. The laws of physics aren't meant to be bent this way. There could be consequences none of us can predict. As if in response to Xen's warning, alarms began blaring throughout the base. Robert rushed to check the readings. Multiple dimensional distortions detected. He called out, "They're not ours." Through the observation window, they could see reality rippling like a pond surface. The sky seemed to split, showing different versions of itself. One stormy, one clear, one with two suns. They're testing us, Martinez growled, making sure we can see what they can do. He turned to his team. Well, let's show them what we can do. Commander Nash, prepare the Hyperion for emergency deployment. Dr. White, Dr. Clark, get your teams ready. If they want to play with dimensions, we'll give them a game they'll never forget. Susan looked at her tablet, watching as reality itself fluctuated around them. Sir, if we power up the drive now, before final testing. Sometimes you have to run before you can walk, Doctor, Martinez said with a grim smile, especially when the enemy is already sprinting. The Hyperion's engines roared to life, the dimensional drive creating visible distortions in the air around the ship. Crew members rushed to their stations, ready to make history, or break it. Commander Nash's voice came over the intercom. All hands, this is not a drill. Man your stations for dimensional drive activation. We are about to attempt humanity's first intentional breach of reality. Try not to break the universe too much on our first day. As the team rushed to their positions, Susan paused for a moment, watching the impossible ship they'd created. 6 months ago, she'd been running simple particle experiments. Now she was about to help launch humanity's first dimensional warfare vessel. The ship's drive pulsed, and for a moment, everyone saw multiple versions of themselves, each making slightly different decisions, each heading to slightly different futures. Then reality snapped back, leaving only one version, the one where humanity had decided to fight back. All stations report ready, Nash announced. Martinez stood straight, his voice clear and commanding. Then let's go make physics regret ever messing with Earth. Engage dimensional drive. The U.S. Hyperion lifted off, its form blurring as it existed in multiple dimensions at once. Above them, the strange ripples in reality continued to spread, like invitations to a war humanity hadn't asked for but was more than ready to join. As they ascended, Susan couldn't help but smile. The universe had rules, yes, but nobody ever said humans had to play by them. The first battle of the Dimension War was about to begin, and Earth was bringing something no other species had, the human ability to look at the impossible and say, "Watch this." Captain Laura Hughes stood on the bridge of the U.S. Hyperion, watching as reality twisted itself into knots around her ship. The dimensional sensors lit up like a Christmas tree, warning of incoming vessels that existed in multiple planes of reality at once. "Multiple contacts," called out Lieutenant Amy Baker from the sensor station. "The Nexus collective ships are everywhere and nowhere at the same time." Laura understood what she meant. The enemy vessels seemed to flicker between dimensions, appearing as ghost-like images across multiple realities. They were sleek, crystalline structures that defied normal space, their forms constantly shifting between states of matter. "Battle stations," Laura ordered, her voice calm despite the situation. "Dr. White, are you seeing this?" Susan White's voice came through the comm system from the dimensional drive control room. "Yes, Captain. They're using some kind of advanced phase-shifting technology, but there's something odd about their approach pattern." Before she could explain further, a transmission cut through all channels. The bridge crew found themselves staring at a being that seemed to be made of living crystal and energy. Its voice resonated through multiple dimensions at once. "This is High Commander Vex of the Nexus Collective. Your species has committed a grave violation of universal law. Cease all dimensional operations immediately." Laura stepped forward, her stance firm. "This is Captain Laura Hughes of the Earth vessel Hyperion. We are conducting peaceful research in our own solar system. Your presence here is an act of aggression." The crystalline being's form flickered with what might have been amusement. "Peaceful? Your kind doesn't understand the meaning of the word. We have observed your history. You turned everything into a weapon. You cannot be trusted with dimensional technology." "That's not your decision to make," Laura replied. "We discovered this technology ourselves. We have every right to develop it." "Primitives." Vex's form pulsed with anger. "You stumbled upon this power by accident. You are children playing with forces beyond your comprehension." At that moment, Robert Clark's voice cut in from the science station. "Captain, they're powering up some kind of dimensional weapon." "Show me what humans do with forces beyond their comprehension," Laura said calmly. "Execute Maneuver Delta 7. The Hyperion's dimensional drive hummed to life. Reality split around them as the ship existed in 3 places at once. The Nexus vessels fired, their weapons cutting through space-time itself, but they hit nothing but empty space in all 3 dimensions. "How?" Vex's transmission showed genuine surprise. "That maneuver should be impossible for your level of technology." Susan's laughter came through the comm. "You'd be surprised what's possible when you don't know something's impossible. Captain, the drive is ready for Phase 2. Laura allowed herself a small smile. "Execute Quantum Fold." The Hyperion didn't just move through space. It folded reality around itself. One moment they were in front of the Nexus fleet. The next they were behind it, above it, and beside it simultaneously. The enemy ships tried to track them, but humans had been practicing impossible moves in video games for decades. The Hyperion's crew handled multiple dimensional spaces like they were born to it. Impossible. Vex's image flickered wildly. Your minds should not be able to process this level of dimensional manipulation. Here's something else that should be impossible, Laura said. Fire the phase-shifted quantum torpedoes. The weapons they launched existed in multiple dimensions at once, making them impossible to dodge. Several Nexus ships found their dimensional fields disrupted, forcing them back into single reality space. Commander Peter Nash grinned at his tactical display. Direct hits across 3 dimensions, Captain. The Centauri data on quantum targeting was spot on. But the Nexus Collective wasn't done. More ships appeared, tearing holes in reality itself to join the battle. The space around Earth began to look like shattered glass, with different versions of reality visible through each crack. Captain, Susan called out urgently, They're trying to force a dimensional collapse. They'd rather destroy this entire sector of space than let us keep this technology. Laura's mind raced through options. The Hyperion was good, but they were still outnumbered. They needed Dr. White, she called out. Remember that theory you had about using human consciousness to stabilize dimensional effects? How many humans would it take to affect an entire battle space? There was a pause before Susan answered. About 5 ships worth. But Captain, we've only got the one. Laura hit her comm button. Hughes to Earth Command. Emergency Protocol Omega. Launch the fleet. Through the dimensional tiers around them, 4 more ships appeared. The U.S. Quantum Edge, Reality Forge, Dimension Breaker, and Event Horizon. Earth's secret backup plan, hidden in other dimensions until needed. Additional ships, reporting for duty, came Admiral Martinez's voice from the Reality Forge. Let's show the collective why you don't pick fights with humans. The 5 Earth ships moved in perfect formation, their crews combined consciousness creating a stable bubble of reality in the chaos around them. Inside this bubble, the laws of physics worked the way humans wanted them to work. Vex's image appeared again, but now there was something new in his crystalline features. Fear. What are you doing? You can't. Reality doesn't work that way. Maybe not where you come from, Laura replied. But we're rewriting the rules. Last chance to withdraw. The Nexus ships began to pull back, their sophisticated sensors telling them something their commanders didn't want to believe. These primitives weren't just breaking the laws of physics, they were writing new ones. As the enemy fleet retreated through their dimensional rifts, Laura turned to her crew. Status report. Multiple dimensional fractures in the local spacetime, Robert reported. But our reality bubble is holding steady, though the readings suggest we may have permanently altered how physics works in this sector of space. Laura nodded. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the first battle of the dimensional war is over. She paused, looking at the still visible tiers in reality around them. And tell them we're going to need a lot more ships. Through one of the nearby reality tiers, she could see other versions of this same moment playing out. Some where they lost, some where they won differently. But in this reality, the one they'd fought to protect, humanity had proven something important. The laws of physics were more like guidelines anyway. The bridge crew cheered, but Laura kept her eyes on the dimensional sensors. This was just the beginning. The Nexus Collective would be back, and next time they'd be ready for humanity's tricks. But that was okay. Humans were good at coming up with new tricks. Dr. White, she called out, how do you feel about teaching physics a few more lessons about messing with Earth? Susan's reply was filled with excitement. Captain, I thought you'd never ask. The Nexus Collective didn't wait long to strike back. Their assault came from 7 different dimensions at once, their crystalline ships tearing through the fabric of space-time like paper. Earth's early warning systems lit up across every reality they could monitor. Dr. Susan White stared at the data flooding her screens in the U.S. Hyperion's dimensional control room. They're not just attacking us in this dimension, she said into her comm. They're trying to erase Earth from every possible reality. Can they do that? Commander Peter Nash's voice crackled through the speaker. Theoretically, yes, but Susan's eyes widened as she noticed something in the readings. Captain Hughes, I'm seeing something strange in the crew's neural patterns. On the bridge, Captain Laura Hughes watched as reality fractured around her ship. The view screen showed multiple versions of Earth, each under attack from different angles. What kind of strange, Doctor? Our crews. Their brains are adapting to multi-dimensional space faster than should be possible. It's like, Susan paused, checking her readings again. It's like human consciousness is naturally equipped to handle multiple realities. Admiral Martinez's voice cut in from the reality forge. What are you saying, Doctor? I'm saying humans might be special. Every other species we've encountered treats dimensions like separate spaces. But our minds, we naturally think in possibilities, in what-ifs. Maybe that's why we're so good at this. The Admiral was quiet for a moment. "Can we use that?" Before Susan could answer, space itself seemed to scream. The Nexus fleet had brought their biggest weapon yet, a massive ship that looked like a geometric nightmare, its crystalline surface reflecting infinite realities. "Energy spike," Lieutenant Baker called out. "They're charging some kind of reality cannon." Laura gripped her command chair. "All ships, execute quantum fold defense pattern Delta." Earth's 5 ships moved in perfect sync, their cruise minds working together to bend reality around them. The Hyperion split into 3 versions of itself, each one firing quantum torpedoes that existed in multiple dimensions. But the Nexus flagship didn't even try to dodge. Instead, it fired its weapon directly at Earth. The beam that emerged wasn't energy or matter. It was pure dimensional force, designed to collapse all possible versions of Earth into a single dead reality. "No," Susan shouted, her hands flying across her controls. "Captain, permission to try something incredibly stupid." "Granted." Laura didn't hesitate. When a scientist called something incredibly stupid, it usually meant it was either brilliant or about to blow up spectacularly. Either way, they had nothing to lose. Susan's voice was tense with concentration. "Commander Nash, I'm sending new coordinates to tactical. When I give the word, I need all 5 ships to fire everything they have at those exact points in spacetime." "But those coordinates," Nash studied his display, "they don't exist in any dimension we can see." "Exactly." Susan smiled. "They exist in the dimensions we're about to create." As the reality collapse beam approached Earth, Susan activated a program she'd been working on in secret. The dimensional drives of all 5 ships synchronized, but instead of trying to avoid the beam, they created new dimensions around it. "Fire," Susan commanded. The combined firepower of Earth's fleet didn't hit the beam. It created new spaces for the beam to exist in, spaces where Earth didn't exist at all. The Nexus weapon found itself firing into empty realities that hadn't existed seconds before. Impossible. The Nexus commander's transmission cut through all frequencies. "You cannot create dimensions at will. The energy requirements alone." "Yeah," Robert Clark cut in from his science station. "We keep hearing that word, impossible. It doesn't mean what you think it means." The reality collapse beam dispersed across 1,000 newly created dimensions, harmlessly passing through spaces where Earth had never been. But something else was happening. The fabric of space-time around the battle was starting to show signs of strain. Cracks appeared in reality itself, showing glimpses of worlds and possibilities never meant to be seen. "Dr. White," Laura called out, "what's happening to space?" Susan checked her readings, her face pale. "We're breaking it, Captain. Actually breaking space-time. The human ability to manipulate dimensions. We're putting too much strain on the universe's basic structure." Through the cracks in reality, they could see other versions of themselves making different choices, fighting different battles. Some were winning, some were losing, but all were changing the very nature of how reality worked. "So what you're saying," Laura said slowly, "is that we're not just breaking the laws of physics anymore. We're breaking reality itself." "Yes." Susan looked up from her screens. "And I don't think we can fix it. The universe wasn't designed to handle this kind of dimensional manipulation." Admiral Martinez's voice came through again, calm despite the situation. "Then we don't fix it. We rebuild it. Doctor, you said human minds are naturally good at handling multiple realities. Then let's use that. Let's make reality work the way we think it should work." The Nexus fleet was regrouping, preparing for another attack. But now, they seemed hesitant, unsure. They had come expecting to find primitives playing with forces they didn't understand. Instead, they found humans actively reshaping those forces to suit their needs. Laura stood up from her command chair. "All ships, prepare for Dimensional Battle Formation 0. We're not just going to win this fight. We're going to rewrite the rules so we can't lose." As Earth's ships moved into position, reality continued to crack around them. But now, instead of trying to prevent it, They were guiding it. Human consciousness, multiplied across 5 crews, was actively reshaping how space-time worked. The universe, it seemed, had made a serious mistake in assuming humans would play by its rules. Instead, they were writing their own. And through the dimensional cracks, other species were watching. Some with fear, some with awe, but all of them realizing the same thing. Humans hadn't just broken the laws of physics. They had become the new lawmakers. The battle for reality itself had drawn unexpected allies to both sides. The Centauri Federation, impressed by humanity's rapid mastery of dimensional warfare, officially joined Earth's forces. Other species, frightened by the growing cracks in space-time, sided with the Nexus Collective. Admiral Martinez watched from the Reality Forge's bridge as 3 more alien fleets emerged from dimensional rifts. The Arcturus Dominion, the Vega Consortium, and the Silicon Mines had all chosen to stand with Earth. Their ships, each unique in design and capability, took up defensive positions around the human fleet. Status report. Martinez called out to his dimensional warfare officer. "Sir, the Nexus Collective has gathered 7 allied species. Their combined fleet is approaching through everywhere at once." Lieutenant Frank Adams reported, his hands moving across his console. "They're using some kind of linked dimensional attack pattern we haven't seen before." Dr. Susan White's voice came through the comm system. "Admiral, we're detecting massive stress patterns in the underlying structure of spacetime. The multiple fleet actions are causing reality to fold in on itself." On the U.S. Hyperion, Captain Laura Hughes studied the tactical display with growing concern. The enemy fleet wasn't just attacking through different dimensions. They were trying to merge realities together, to force a collapse that would reset everything back to normal physics. "They still don't understand," she muttered. "Commander Nash, signal the fleet. Execute Operation Reality Break." The 5 Earth ships moved in perfect formation, their crews combined consciousness creating ripples in spacetime. But this time, they weren't just defending. They were actively reshaping how reality worked around them. "All allied ships," Laura broadcast, "stay within our reality bubble. What we're about to do, well, physics isn't going to like it very much." The Centauri ambassador's ship acknowledged with a pulse of quantum energy. "We trust your species' instincts, Captain. Though we must admit, your methods are unconventional." "Unconventional is what we do best," Laura replied with a smile. "Dr. White, begin the sequence." In her control room, Susan initiated a program she'd been developing since their first encounter with the collective. "Starting dimensional cascade. All ships, sync your consciousness interfaces now." The human crews reached out with their minds, guided by the dimensional technology they'd mastered. But instead of just perceiving multiple realities, they began to actively shape them. "Impossible." The Nexus commander's voice boomed across all frequencies. "You cannot exist in all realities at once. The energy requirements would be impossible for any normal physics." Robert Clark cut in from his science station. "Good thing we're not using normal physics anymore." The Earth ships seemed to blur, existing in dozens of realities simultaneously. But unlike the Nexus ships, which jumped between dimensions, the human vessels existed in all of them at once, because their crews could think in all of them at once. Multiple dimensional fronts opening. Lieutenant Baker called out. "The Nexus fleet is trying to counter with." "Sir, they're trying to unmake the dimensions we're creating." Laura stood from her command chair. "Let them try. All ships, execute quantum folding combat pattern alpha. Show them what happens when you try to fight humans in every reality at once." The battle that followed defied description in any single language or dimension. Earth's ships, supported by their allies, fought across hundreds of realities simultaneously. When the Nexus fleet would close off one dimension, the humans would simply create 3 more to replace it. "Admiral," Susan's voice was urgent, "their attempts to erase our new dimensions are causing cascade failures in the original space-time structure. If this continues..." Martinez finished her thought, Reality itself might completely unravel. He paused for a moment. Doctor, you once said human consciousness was specially suited to handling multiple dimensions. What would happen if we used that ability not just to fight in multiple realities, but to create a completely new framework for reality itself? There was a long pause before Susan answered. Sir, we'd be rewriting the fundamental laws of physics, creating new rules for how the universe works. It's never been done before. Lots of things had never been done before until humans tried them, Martins replied. Captain Hughes, prepare the fleet for one final maneuver. We're going to show the universe why you don't push humans into a corner. Laura nodded, understanding the plan without needing it explained. All Earth ships, form up on the Hyperion. Allied vessels, maintain defensive positions around us. We're about to try something that's either going to save reality or break it completely. The 5 Earth ships moved into a perfect pentagonal formation. Their dimensional drives synchronized, powered not just by technology, but by the combined consciousness of their crews. Hundreds of human minds working together to imagine new ways for reality to exist. Sir, Lieutenant Adams called out, the Nexus fleet is launching their final attack. They're trying to collapse all dimensional barriers at once. Martinez smiled grimly. Let them. Dr. White, initiate the Reality Reformation Protocol. Susan's fingers flew across her controls. All ships, linking consciousness interfaces now. Remember, everyone. Don't think about how physics should work. Think about how you want it to work. As the Nexus weapon fired, reality began to tear itself apart. But instead of trying to stop it, the human fleet guided the destruction, channeling it into something new. They weren't just breaking the laws of physics anymore. They were writing new ones. The universe shuddered around them as human consciousness, multiplied across 5 crews and supported by their alien allies, began to reshape the very fabric of existence. Through the dimensional tiers, they could see it happening. Reality rebuilding itself according to rules that made sense to human minds. Rules that allowed for possibilities instead of limitations, for what if instead of cannot. The Nexus fleet's weapons found themselves firing into a universe that no longer operated according to their understanding of physics. Their carefully calculated attacks scattered across dimensions that didn't exist moments before, guided by laws they couldn't comprehend. Sir, Susan's voice was filled with wonder. It's working. We're actually doing it. We're rewriting the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Martinez watched as reality reformed itself around them, guided by human imagination and determination. Send word to Earth. Tell them physics just learned why you don't pick a fight with humans. The battle wasn't over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity hadn't just broken the laws of physics, they had become its new authors. And the universe would never be the same again. Dr. Susan White's hands trembled as she studied the readings on her screen aboard the U.S. Hyperion. The numbers didn't make sense anymore. But then again, nothing really did. The very concept of making sense was being rewritten with each passing moment. Captain, she called out to Laura Hughes, we have a problem. A big one. Bigger than rewriting the laws of physics. Laura asked, her eyes fixed on the swirling chaos visible through the ship's viewing ports. The dimensional cascades we created, they're spreading. Not just through our local space, but through all of reality. Every dimension, every possible universe, they're all being affected by what we've done. Admiral Martinez's voice came through the comm system, calm despite the situation. Explain it in simple terms, Doctor. Susan took a deep breath. We didn't just change how physics works here. We changed how it works everywhere. The new rules we created, they're rippling out across all of existence, and not everyone is ready for that kind of change. Through the dimensional tiers around them, they could see other civilizations struggling to adapt. Some embraced the new physics, their ships and technology evolving rapidly to match human understanding. Others fought against it, trying desperately to maintain the old laws they understood. Commander Peter Nash studied his tactical display, which now showed readings in 12 dimensions simultaneously. The Nexus Collective is pulling back, but something's wrong with their ships. He was right. The crystalline vessels of the collective were starting to fade, like ghosts caught between realities. Their technology, based entirely on the old laws of physics, was becoming incompatible with the new universe humans had created. "We have to do something," Laura said, standing from her command chair. "We can't just let them fade away." Robert Clark spoke up from his science station. "Captain, I think I have an idea. The same human consciousness that lets us adapt to these changes, we might be able to use it to help others adjust." "How?" Martins asked. "We project our understanding of the new physics outward, not forcing it on them, but offering it. Like teaching someone a new language." Susan's eyes lit up. "Yes, we can use the dimensional drives to broadcast a kind of physics translation matrix. Help other species bridge the gap between the old universe and the new one." Laura nodded. "Do it. All ships, prepare to broadcast on all frequencies, all dimensions. Let's teach the universe how to speak human." The 5 Earth ships positioned themselves in a new formation, their dimensional drives humming with power. This time, instead of reshaping reality, they were teaching it how to reshape itself. The effect was immediate and stunning. Where before there was chaos, now there was transformation. Species that had been fighting against the changes began to understand them. The Nexus ships stabilized, their crystalline structures adapting to incorporate the new laws of physics. Through it all, humanity's alien allies watched in amazement. The Centauri ambassador's voice carried a note of awe. "In all our history, we've never seen anything like this. You haven't just changed the universe, you've taught it how to change itself." "That's what humans do," Laura replied with a smile. "We adapt, and we help others adapt too." Suddenly, all the ship's sensors lit up with new readings. The dimensional barriers between realities were stabilizing, but not by returning to their old state. Instead, they were forming something entirely new, a multidimensional framework that could support both the old laws of physics and the new ones humans had created. "Look at this," Susan breathed, her eyes wide. "The universe isn't just accepting our changes. It's building on them. Different species are adding their own understanding to the new framework. It's like we've taught reality how to evolve." Admiral Martinez's voice was thoughtful. "And that's the real victory here, isn't it? Not that we broke the laws of physics, but that we showed the universe there never really were any laws, just guidelines waiting to be improved." The Nexus commander's transmission cut through the chaos, but this time there was no hostility in their crystalline voice. "We were wrong about your species. We thought you were dangerous because you didn't understand the rules. Now we see that you are remarkable because you understand that rules are meant to grow." Around Earth's fleet, reality continued to shift and change, but now it was a controlled transformation. Different species began experimenting with the new physics, each adding their own unique perspective to the growing framework of universal laws. "Dr. White," Laura called out, "final status report." Susan looked up from her readings with a smile. "The dimensional barriers have stabilized. The new physics framework is self-sustaining. And..." She paused, checking one last reading. "We're detecting new dimensional spaces forming spontaneously. The universe has learned to create itself in new ways." "And Earth?" Martins asked. "Safe," Susan confirmed. "In fact, better than safe. We're at the center of a new age of physics. Other species are already asking to send scientists to learn from us." Laura looked out at the transformed space around her ship. The universe looked different now, more alive, more full of possibilities. Stars shimmered with new energies, space itself seemed to pulse with potential, and through the stabilized dimensional tiers, they could see infinite new frontiers waiting to be explored. "Send word to Earth Command," she said. Tell them that humanity hasn't just changed the rules of the game. We've invented a whole new way to play." Robert Clark chuckled at his station. "And to think This all started because we didn't know something was impossible. That's always been humanity's greatest strength, Martins replied. We don't let reality tell us what we can't do. We show reality what we can do. As the fleet prepared to return home, Susan made one final entry in her log. Today marks the beginning of a new era in universal history. We set out to break the laws of physics, but in doing so, we discovered something far more important, that the only real law in the universe is that everything can change, everything can grow, and everything can become more than it was. Humanity didn't just break physics. We set it free. The U.S. Hyperion led the fleet back toward Earth, sailing through a universe that was both familiar and entirely new. Behind them, the dimensional tiers had become windows of opportunity, portals to new possibilities that hadn't existed before humans decided to rewrite the rules. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of the transformed cosmos, reality itself seemed to smile. After all, it had been waiting for a species like humanity, one that wouldn't just accept the laws of physics, but would have the audacity to improve them. The dimension war was over. The age of human physics had begun.